beautiful people. Hope this finds you well. So, here we are. Autumn equinox just passed. Autumn equinox was yesterday, and here we are. So, the wheel of the year turns once more. And what an incredible year it has been. It's been a year of so many layers, so much is happened, and yet in so many ways it feels as if we're only but just beginning. But here we are at Equinox, and I look at Equinox as being one of the key doorways of time throughout the year. The other ones that really speak to me is All Hallowed Eve, Samhain, Halloween, then next being winter solstice, Yule, Christmas. You know, these are doorways of time, gateways of time that really speak to me, I guess the most. And here we are at Equinox. You know, we've got day and night in equal balance. We've got this feeling of, you know, the days are drawing in, yet actually in fact, you know, we've got an equal amount of daytime, equal amount of light to the equal amount of darkness. And for me, within the work that I do with the land, we're bringing in some of the biggest harvests of the year. You know, there's a time being spent in the kitchen, preserving, fermenting, canning, turning all that kind of beautiful harvest into things that can sustain us during that darker part of the year, during the winter and over winter. There's a lot of foraging that's been going on as well. So been foraging in an ancient hedgerow that is not far from home. Foraged elderberry, made elderberry syrup, also rosehip syrups, dried out some of the rose hips to make tea. Also have made and foraged mugwort to make mugwort beer. You know, there's been a lot of learning as well that's really happened within this last 6 or 7 months. You know, elderberry syrup is just full of goodness, and what I find fascinating is that, you know, the land and the hedgerows are gifting us absolutely what we need as we move into those darker, colder winter weeks and months. You know, elderberry and rosehip are just packed with vitamin C. You know, and it is like nature is gifting us ahead of time what we need, and you know, learning how to make those, how to preserve those and store those has been just such a gift. And within the last few days as well, me and my little one have just harvested this monster. You know, look at the size of that, this monster of a squash. This is a pumpkin that we have grown from a seed. And the beautiful thing about this squash and this pumpkin is that the seeds that we used were gifted to us by a lovely lady whose dad used to grow pumpkins in the foothills back home in Poland. And by all accounts he grew some really monster squashes. Well, this is a monster. So, you know, to be able to grow from seeds that were gifted to you from a pumpkin, it's just a beautiful journey. And my little one has nurtured this huge squash from seed into a seedling, into a plant that was then taken out of a humble little polytunnel out into the kitchen garden, where he's nurtured it and watered it and cared for it. And in the last few days, the just leading up a couple of days before autumn equinox, the pumpkin plant come to the end of its life cycle. It come to the end of its life cycle, so it was absolutely right to harvest it. And then we're keeping it in a very cool, dark place up until All Hallowed Eve, when it will be prepared into soup for the family, and also into sweet pumpkin pie. But only yesterday was I gifted by a real character, gifted a recipe for pumpkin ale, spiced pumpkin ale. So all the kind of flavours that you would expect in a sweet pumpkin pie are going to be used within a beer. And he walked me through this recipe, and I absolutely now gently understand some of the key principles of making ale in the old way, in the medicinal way. You know, I've made mugwort beer that is using hops, and again the mugwort and the hops were foraged, and the mugwort was within my family's woodland, and the hops were in the kitchen garden space, and I, you know, what I feel is kind of quite incredible about that is I've been standing next to that hedge for the last year, next to the water tap, not noticing that there was this ancient hedge that was filled with hops. And just recently, one of the wonderful guys within that community that I shared a space with come over to me and said, "Look, Shane, look what I've got," and he was holding a handful of hops. You know, I just kind of find it amazing that the land becomes a teacher in itself. You know, the innate works in the most incredible ways. So yes, we are going to be able to craft from the second pumpkin that we've got into the kitchen garden, that is going to be, well, it could get bigger, but it is probably at the moment half the size. The pumpkin plant is still quite vibrant. So come All Hallowed Eve, just after, when that becomes harvested, we will make some pumpkin ale, spiced pumpkin ale, using cloves and ginger, garam masala, some nutmeg, some cinnamon, all those kind of wonderful spices that you would bring together at this time. So I'm really, really excited and stoked about that. You know, just being able to kind of learn these things is just incredible. And as he was saying to me, he was quite a character. He was saying to me that he got taught about that out in Germany, where it pumpkin ale seemed to kind of take hold and originate from, and he was shown, and he's passed it on to me, and I'll be passing it on to others. I think, you know, the old medicinal ways of making beers, once you kind of got the basics and the understanding of that, and then you can kind of build upon it. It's about those building blocks, and for me, winemaking was the first understanding of, you know, bringing it together. And I've even now learned in the last couple of weeks how to make or how to capture wild yeast so that you don't need to, have the packet brought yeast. You can cultivate wild yeast in your kitchen to be able to use in your wine and beer making. Already make kombucha, which is a fermented tea known as divine tea, really good for the gut. And in a way, that's about cultivating and capturing a wild yeast. And the beer making is the same. You kind of make something called ginger bug, where you feed grated ginger and water, and you feed it daily, and then it kind of bursts into this wild yeast that can be pitched into your ale, and that's going to really suit the pumpkin beer. So yeah, me and my little guy, we harvest this beautiful squash here that's bigger than my old head here, and it weighs a ton. I mean, my little guy picked it up. He was like, oh, and he's like, that's really heavy. Which shows you it's just packed. It's going to be packed full of pumpkin in there, and and that was one of the dreams. One of the dreams was to if we could grow a pumpkin, this second year, then amazing. And the first year was to grow some veg for a Yule winter solstice dinner. I kind of, everything else has been just huge gift, and the learning that's come from that. And that's the thing. I think if we look at the essence of the message that I'm kind of really anchoring from the innate on this autumn equinox, it is that we in a way have the opportunity to rebalance ourselves. So much, I believe, has come out of balance. We've really moved out of balance in the way that humanity has been living. It's been too rushed, too hurried. It's been a treadmill way of life that has been kind of anchored predominantly in consumerism, because that is what seems to power the world. But maybe that model needs to be really looked at, and in a way this world event that we're all living through is completely digging into that and saying to us, you're going to have to reevaluate the way that you're doing everything. Recently I shared a video about my smartphone, and my journey away from a smartphone. And what really kind of disgruntled me is that the batteries that go into a smartphone, they seem to only last 18 months, 2 years tops, and you have no way of replacing them. Once the battery dies, the phone dies, and the oddity around that is that the battery life seems to run parallel alongside the contract life. And I was out of contract, and yet my phone then started to die. It was almost like there's an inbuilt clock in there that's got to self-destruct once the contract has been served. And you come out of contract, the self-destruct goes within the phone, the battery starts to die, you have no way of replacing it. And the biggest rant about that is, these companies have the technology, without a shadow of a doubt, to build a replaceable battery, rather than you having to replace the whole phone. So, you know what? You can have your smartphone. I went and got myself a very basic, simple phone, paid outright for it. And the beautiful thing is about that phone, it charges up within about an hour and a half off a solar panel, and then has a standby battery life on it for 14 days, if you're not using it heavily. Well, since I've come off a smartphone, and my phone sits quietly most days, and I might take 1 or 2 calls a day. And then, you know, I jump on my desktop and do my communication through that. Or, you know, going forwards, I got a real sense of spending more and more time going forwards, more time in the wilderness. That, you know, I could charge up my tiny little tablet I've got. I can, you know, jump into the grid through that, and then that also can be charged up via solar. And, you know, this last week I've also been shown the key principles of building a wind turbine using reclaimed oil drums. You know, there's so much happening that's bigger and greater than me, that is absolutely pulling me like on a gravitational pull in a certain direction. You know, we sometimes, you know, think that we're heading in a direction, and a gravitational pull comes along and pulls us. And it's all by design, it's never by chance, you know. And I think that humanity has this huge opportunity to rebalance itself. You know, we had been living way too rushed, way too hurried, and in a way it was diluting what mattered the most, and it was diluting what it means to be human. You know, we're not kind of, you know, born to be on a treadmill. As a good friend says, so often you're either living in time or you're moving through time, and I think humanity has definitely been moving through time. So autumn equinox, the other kind of seed thought I want to share with you, and then I'm going to pull one of these for you. It is the Light Seers Tarot. This pack was gifted to me a few days back from a really sweet dear friend, and I absolutely adore. I never come across this pack, and I absolutely adore it. So it'd be really nice to pull a card as a collective message. But the other seed thought I'm going to leave you with is, if we kind of look at autumn equinox and we look at the wheel of the year, it sits right bang in the centre there, and it is that sense of balance. If we kind of look at what happens hereafter, is that if we look at it as a cycle of birth and a life cycle, is that we're moving into that time of waning. Just like the moon phases, we're moving into a waning time. That, you know, equinox, you begin to tip into, not for everyone, but the darker part of the year. For us here, for sure, the darker part of the year. But the energy is beginning to wane, and it's beginning to drop away. Then at All Hallowed Eve, it comes to a kind of end. There's an end, and then, you know, what the innate used to say to me, between All Hallowed Eve, Samhain, Halloween, between then and winter solstice, you've got the great pause. Okay, you just plummet deeper and deeper into the darkest part of the year, and that is the great pause. It's an absolute opportunity to rest, you know. And I know that we've had such a busy summer, which is why there hasn't been so many videos, and I've been trying to get my head around how I can consistently move forwards with the understanding around consulting and the growing aspect of the kitchen garden, that during the spring and summer, you know, is you know, it requires, and respectfully so, requires your time and nurture and care and attention. And then, of course, as we drop into this part of that wheel and that cycle of time, there is a huge pause, and it is about rest and reflection. And then, of course, winter solstice, it's the birth. You've got the birth of the sun. So you can see that kind of life cycle. You've got the birth of the sun at winter solstice, and then in bulk it's just starting to kind of take hold a little bit more, and austerer at Easter is building again. You know, you've got another layer of it being built, and then Beltane in May, and then from there on it's all about the light, all about those longer days. And I've really harmonized to those cycles and to those gateways and portals of time through the relationship that's been cultivated with the land ever since May 2019 in a very strong way. It's always been there, it has always been there, but it's become very practical, and I've formed this practical collaborated relationship with it, you know, working with those moon phases on planting seeds, you know. And just recently I've been very gently sharing some of that wisdom that I've gathered with a wonderful gentleman who is going to be shadowing me over the next year and beyond in growing. And we turned over this plot of land, this piece of land, and we caught the last full moon, and he sowed these seeds for green manure, which enriches the soil and gives back. So that piece of land will rest over the winter, but at the same time it's nurturing this green manure that grows up waist height and above, full of clover and mustard, a tansy, which is all going to enrich the soil. And then it's cut just before, just as it flowers before it goes to seed. It's cut and then it's dug back into the soil, you know. And we caught that moon phase, and can't believe it's the last moon phase, and some of those seedlings are that high, you know. It's just, this is phenomenal. It's like, it teaches us so much, and it's a humbling experience. So there's some of my thoughts. I could talk for ages, and I need to be mindful of that. But I absolutely love sharing. I love sharing. And the other thing that we've done, the thing is about autumn equinox, there is a bounty. There's an absolute bounty of apples around, and we were gifted the privilege to be able to forage some wonderful crab apples off the local village. Church went there, and we done some, helped them with some caretaking of some of the trees. My dad's second nature and very skilled at that level. He's a woodsman, as his dad was, and his granddad, my great granddad. And we were then gifted the opportunity to forage these crab apples and make lots of crab apple jam and jellies and even apple sauce. And I tried it yesterday. I was like blown away. All those flavours, clove and again ginger, all those kind of flavours of this time are in there. It's just like amazing. So, like Seers Tarot, this is a collective message we're going to pull. And sitting behind me, we've got Bridget there. You can't quite see her. Maybe I'll show you before I go. Candles. I just love this time of year. It is getting darker earlier, and I love just lighting up the candles and just gently allowing that light to be carried around the room. And also my staffs behind me. Oh, here's a card. It just, I just kind of shuffle and it wanted to come. Oh. Okay, this is making sense to me. It's the Five of Cups. Let's get that image up there. Beautiful sky. To me, this is absolutely bang on for this time. You know, we got a sense of the light there, You know, for me, that light is the light of this time of the year. And number 5 is, for me, is a very much a transitory number. It's a transitory number. It's not a number that stands still. So even though we've got that sense of balance of the equinox, if we look at what's happening in the world, and we look at our planet and we look at humanity, we're in a transition. But I think the key is to, here's the message, is to root yourself within that transition. You know, we can try and change it. We can try and fight it. We can try and rise up against it. We can use force, you know, and we can kind of clutch and we can kind of grab and we can, you know. And I think that in a way, what's required is you know, I think this has been actually a consistent message throughout this, is that what's required is for us to anchor ourselves within the transition. So anchor ourselves within the transition. Number 5, you know, being a very, for me, it's a very transitory number, but you know, it's got this feeling of movement, but there's a solidness to it, and that is what I feel. You know, we are being rebalanced. That is being forced upon us without a shadow of a doubt, and it is an opportunity to rebalance. But the key is to root ourselves within the transition, and a cup, you know, a cup holds us. So there is this feeling of the innate trying to hold humanity, and there is a definite kind of mixed feeling about that. You know, there is so much happening, and we're hearing about lots and lots of people dying and lots of loss. You know, there's a mixed feeling around all of this, and I think, you know, the key is to try to gently cultivate that inner voice and listen to that inner voice within inside of you. And that's the thing here within the image. You know, she's looking down into the earth, and you've got this little portal opening up. It's almost like a well, but you know, in a way, it's this, the message I take from that is this sense of looking deep within and unlocking that voice that sits very firmly inside of you, that is absolutely trying to lead and guide and show you the way. I know that this journey that I've been on for the last 18 months, since May 2019, has a gravitational pull. It is absolutely taking me somewhere. You know, I think these last 8 or 9 months, learning all that I've learned, and that wisdom has been incredible. That has a gravitational pull, and you know, people can say, well, how does that fit in with the other work that you do with your consulting? Well, it fits hand in hand, because you know, there's a sense of, you know, not only is it about kind of growing food, it's about growing people. Not only is it about self-sufficiency and resilience, it's about self-sufficiency and resilience within self. You know, it's about leadership. That's the core aspect. It's being able to kind of, you know, go into an environment and be able to look after yourself, from growing the food that you grow, harnessing energy, being able to harness water. Well, that's absolutely the same reflected in nurturing change within people. It's all about nurturing, switching on provoking, stirring up leadership for people to absolutely identify, understand their own answers, and that kind of stirring or nudging there from the innate and those that are watching over them. You know, the bottom line is the innate and spirit, their intention fully is to add value to our years. You know, we're in an incredible time, but I see that as anchoring ourselves within that transition. And you know, 5 is half of 10, and 10 is a very solid number, a very, very solid number. And you've got that sense of foundation. You know, we are halfway through that. You know, 5 of cups. You know, that this is leading into fundamental change. You know, and I think that if we can anchor ourselves within that transition, and observe it, be a part of it. You know, and sometimes I can feel myself, you know, being very frustrated with what I see in the world, and that's me being really heartfelt, honest, that, you know, how people are, you know, working with or reacting to. You know, we had a couple of announcements this week from a government, and on Monday, I think it was, we had the chief medical officers giving a presentation, and blow me, 2 hours later I'm just out to get some milk and some lemons. I can't grow lemons here. Maybe in time. Can't grow lemons here at this point in time. I know people that do. But milk and lemons, and there had been a run on the shops. The shops have been ransacked. The shelves were empty. And you know, that sort of frustrates me. You know, it frustrates me, agitates me. I become very disappointed, you know, but that disappointment is not going to serve anybody, but I still experience it, I feel it. It dissolves fairly quickly these days. You know, I then write about it, and I share the stories, and you know, just trying to gently, you know, nudge people's perspective from a place of, you know, integrity and experience. But yeah, very, very powerful card. I absolutely adore these cards. You know, they've got some lovely images. You know, look at this. It's a beautiful image. Look at that. Beautiful image. Beautiful image. I'm going to show you if I can find it. Something I pulled the other day, and it really spoke to me. And then I'll gently say goodbye for now. My next video I know is going to be out around, I'm not saying close to, but it'll be around All Hallowed Eve. We've got the sense of very gently laying the bothy kitchen garden to rest at that time, and a few of the people within that community, if we're able to, are going to gather together, and we're going to have some, here it is, sweet pumpkin pie, some mugwort ale from my last brewing, and ceremonially, ritually, just kind of lay that space to rest, so it can rest over the winter, energetically close it down, and step very consciously into the darker part of the year, the time of rest and reflection. And then very gently I'm going to take a break from my social media, and then kind of use that time to anchor some creativity, some reflection, some rest. And then at winter solstice we start the whole cycle again with probably some really huge change. This is the one I wanted to share with you. This is the Magician. What a funky card. I absolutely adore these cards. Big shout out of thanks to who you know you are, my dearest friend. I absolutely love these, and they're going to become a part of my daily work. when I'm consulting. So I'm going to say goodbye for now. I told you I can rabbit on, but I love sharing with you all. And keep shining and speak real soon.